As I am starting this day, my brain is outside because I have somebody removing snow and it's making that droning sound. And then I open my curtain and it's still a bit dark out today, which
Yes,
which
yes.
is
You
fun.
mean,
You look like you've got light coming in on your end.
we actually don't. So we have a snowstorm, snow squall, blowing snow warning. So I did my walk this morning outside because I'm brilliant and I just can't stop. So I did, it's usually a 4 mile walk in the morning, which is going to need to stop. And it was like not snowing. And when I left, it was like there was nothing, there was no wind. It was just cool, right? But I was dressed for the weather. And then all of a sudden the wind picked up and blowing snow. And I was like, oh, this is just nuts. So we're supposed to get that throughout the day. And it's just supposed to snow. It's not yet, but it's, that overcast
Mhm.
white cloud though, right? Because it's not dark. There's just like it's a heaviness in the air. It's awful.
I just had I'm like, why am I expecting you to still be at like 8 a.m. when you're 2 hours ahead of me? So obviously
Yes.
it's light out because you are at 10 a.m. Um, but yeah, that's yuckiness. That's just gonna come. But then you guys in Ontario, you get to have snow days, you know.
Um, yeah, they're not as many. Well, I guess they are for stupid reasons. So yes, yes. And then, that causes that extra stress on a parent. Like, well, what do we do now? Um, it was hard when I was working in St. Catharines because that's 45 minutes away. On a good day, and then like let's throw some snow in there, and it was just a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's one of the things that I am so grateful about CAS. Um, the fact that we could, take care of our children, go pick them up at school, from school, go, like
Yes.
you always had that ability to do that. And I appreciated living close to work because you could just navigate. Oh, I'm gonna go pick Sean up from school. Oh, there's something happening at school and I have to go there and be there. But when you're in St. Catharines and Hamilton and it's winter and yeah.
Yeah, and there were pros and cons. I didn't have to go to people's homes. People came to me. It wasn't like I had to provide a service where like CAS, you have to engage the client. At the hospital, I could, and if they said no, then it was a no. Like it wasn't. So there were definitely trade-offs. In the beginning, I had flexibility. I had possibly one of the most understanding managers ever, knowing that I was driving, knowing that I had young kids, knowing what was going on in my personal life that was just up in ruins. And so she knew and was quite flexible with me. So it was wonderful. And then there were some management changes and some of that, some of those pieces got lost. Um, but yeah, like I could say, if I work, later on Tuesday, can I leave? There were times my dad got really sick and was in the hospital, and I said, my phone is on. Please tell them to call me. It's fine. He was on support, so he wasn't talking to us. Like we were just there because decisions needed to be made. And I was there to support my mom. So I was taking phone calls and it was fine because I could juggle the two at the time. Um, so I was really lucky that that was there. But then again, I put those parameters or those lack of boundaries in place, and it happened on weekends, and it happened at 7 o'clock at night, and it happened at 9 o'clock at night. And so, my phone was always on and I was always answering. And I mean, what else can I do? Um, but I was able to take that time back when it did.
It's the taking the time back that is good. I liked the aspect of your job where you don't have to go into people's homes. That was the hardest thing for me. It was always hard to go into people's spaces. Did I tell you of the home that I went into and they had a snake as a pet, but had not told me? So
Oh, yep.
I remember walking through the house and there was a living room where they had a big tank. In my head, tanks were for fish. So I just assumed it was for fish because it was dark. They did
Yep.
not switch on the light in that area. So I was just like, oh, nice fishes as I walked through and did my thing. And then when I went back for the second visit, that's when they were like, oh no, no, no. Was it the first visit where they were saying, "Oh, we're looking for so and so. We're looking for so and so. Have you found so and so?" And they literally talking amongst themselves that they're looking for, I don't know this name. And I obviously asked who so and so was, and they then told us, "Well, it's our snake, and we can't find it." Girl, um.
I've been like, I'm out.
That was me. That was I couldn't even sit because I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, um, this is why we're told you have to be professional. So just breathe, Dayirai. You have to be professional. But now I'm going, oh God, help me. I need to get out of here. How do I get out of here without screaming and running, you know? And yeah, somehow I managed to sit through it. I don't even know what that mentality is that makes you kind of just, it's almost like there's no sense of self-preservation. Oh, it's there and you stuff it out. Like you stuff it in and you just say, or stuff it down and you just say to it, it's okay, just
Breathe.
breathe.
They'll have to come back. So you might as well do it now, because if not, you got to come back tomorrow to do it. And they might not find whatever.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I did not enter their house again. That was my
We're just gonna close this one. See ya.
She's like, yeah, no way, we're not doing that again. I'm sorry. I am not going into a home that has a snake and they have lost it. And
Lose it. Like, I had one house I went into, one of my very first as a, so I had some very interesting cases given to me because I started an intake, which is now named something else, assessment and something. Clearly I've been out of it for a while. So when I was on the intake team, so we would get these lovely cases that would come in. I got some really interesting ones, but you talking about the snake reminded me. So this home, um, so when you walked in, I actually had to step over a dead mouse.
what?
Yeah, and I was like, hey, we're not doing this. It was the same thing. It unfortunately was not livable. The living room, which wasn't very, very big, it was in the downtown area, one of the older homes. So, like it wasn't in a bad area. It would have been a beautiful home if it was taken care of, was all lined with aquariums, snakes, dragons, whatever you could find. They had it in there. And so that mouse was meant for somebody's dinner. And I was like, okay, you guys have 24 hours. I will be back in 24 hours. And this needs to be a little bit better. So I left them like a list of like 5 tasks. And I was like, I'm out. I can't do this. I'll be back. And I did. I went back the next day and, I went in but I was more prepared for what I was walking into. Because when I got the report and they said that the home was not livable for children, for young children, I did not expect it not to be livable for adults either. Yeah. And they had dogs, cats, bunnies, hamsters. Like it was like I don't know. I don't know how. And then there were like 5 kids and a mom that lived in there. Like I didn't understand. But yeah, the snakes reminded me of that. I did the same thing. I had to like step over the mouse to get in. And I was like, we're going to give you a list of tasks. And like the older children and mom did what I had said. But the house ended up being condemned by the city. So like they had to leave, and they literally had to leave everything there and start all over. But yeah, snakes. So what I learned is that every time I spoke to somebody, I asked if they had pets.
I should have learned that. Apparently, I did not ask. I would just go in because for me, it was just like, I don't wanna, but I have to.
Yeah.
I remember one home, um, this parent really was struggling and struggling. I don't know if there was trauma or if it was drug related. We never really focused more on the mental health aspect of the families. And this was, a parent was single parenting and had this child who every day school was calling, every day school was calling, and it was just, I remember I had to be at school all the time. And then this parent, paranoia 100, like 101, like it did not matter which table they were sitting at. Anything that was said, they had to, like, it was just, it was so hard. But I remember being told I had to go to the house, and I went to the home. Every window was covered, extra
Oh,
covered, like black.
yeah.
You could not even see what was going on inside. And I had to go inside. And inside, no lights were on. Like, this person would not switch the lights on. So it was, I think I managed to kind of walk through sort of once, and I found myself so, I don't like the word trigger. I haven't found another one.
But that's what it is.
Yeah, it just, it brought something, like I did not feel safe. I really did not feel safe on so many levels. Um, so I walked through, and then I said to my supervisor, no, I'm not. I'm not going back into that space. I can't. Um, because it was such a bizarre experience, because you're experiencing this person outside of their home in the school area or school arena. You know experiencing them when they come to our office spaces, and then it really matched what I walked myself into when I went into that home. And it was an interesting dynamic. It really was an interesting dynamic, but that wasn't the worst house, the worst experience, not worst, um, but the most interesting experience was the home that I went into, that I'm thinking, um, if it were today, I probably would have put a mask on and hazmat and all of that stuff to walk into that space. And it was just, you walk into this space, but then you look at a person and how they look outside. You would never match how
Yeah.
they are with how they were living. And how they were living was just, oh my goodness. You enter into the home, and you were greeted by a dead mouse. Mine wasn't a dead mouse, it was just pizza slices, dog poo, cat, stuff. Um, then diapers, dirty diapers, because they were all the children, there were three children under the ages of 6 in the home. And diapers, doo-doo on the walls, you know. So you've got three children, you've got a cat, you've got a dog, and then you go into the kitchen, the sink is filled to the brim with dishes and water that has turned moldy and black. Like, it's literally, you can take the layer off of
Oh,
that. mold black.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they had like a small little table in the center of the kitchen. And I think what this person was doing was they were sweeping and then just piling everything under that table. So now you had a mountain of
Oh,
dirt and that was under the table. And then I asked them, so how are you eating? Where are you doing? Like what's happening with that situation? Oh, the dishes were now in the bathtub. That's where they were doing the dishes now, except they were not being done. The water literally looked similar to the water in the kitchen sink.
so then
So
where
then
were they?
I'm like, so where are you bathing? Like,
Yeah, that's, I'm thinking, where are you bathing?
where are you bathing? Where are the babies bathing? Like, how is that even? And then the main bedroom, you couldn't even open the door because of all the stuff that was on the floor. I think there was an element of hoarding, maybe an element. There was just, it was one of those spaces that I walked into and I walked out and I was saying to God, how do I go into my car? Like, I feel like I need to take everything off and just throw it into,
Yes. Away.
well, throw it away basically. Yeah, but it was just, yeah. And then I recall talking to this person and asking them, how do you get there? Like what is this? And their response was their mom never taught them how to function, so the life skills that they need. And I took a step back and thought about that. I mean, I don't know what the experiences of other people have been with their mothers. I always say that mine was an apprenticeship program for all of us. So we were taught at a very early age the very basic life skills. And I always say I am thankful because by the time she died, we was self-sufficient, at least the older ones we were able to then take care of ourselves without being a burden
Yes.
on others. You know, um, I recently held space for a mom and an 11-year-old, and we were talking, and asking her, okay, so what does life at home look like? And anything that you do? No, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't do her own laundry. She doesn't wash. Like she doesn't clean, she does not cook, she doesn't do, and I know that there's a little bit of judgment maybe coming through for me, and it might not be judgment in terms of saying, hey, she ought to be doing this, but at the back of my mind, I'm always reminded of this 20-something-year-old that had these kids and
Yes.
had their home in this state, and their response was, it was their mother's fault. Their mother did not do what they were supposed to do to teach them these skills. So every day I look and I go, and then the opposite side of it, where I had a mother who taught us those life skills, and I see how helpful they are in our lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I keep saying, so a few points that I'm taking out of that. First, I'm going to start with um, the background and history and childhood. Very similar. Like I was self-sufficient at a young age. Parents worked, our older brother. So we were taught these skills. Um, Fast forward to my children. I have one child who is on the spectrum with ADHD and some social anxiety. So he struggles. He's brilliant. So don't get me wrong. He's a brilliant boy. But he's also functioning at a little bit younger. So I have one who's advanced and one who, in some aspects, is at a younger age. So, he was able to do things and cook and whatever. And so the other day I had said, Nate, like you can make your own breakfast. And he's like, yeah, but I forgot steps. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
So then I can teach you again, like this isn't a problem. Alex can make everything. He got 100% in cooking class. So like I throw them at him all the time. I know you can cook. He does it, he can do his laundry, he can cook, and he can do all these things. The only thing I said to him is I can't do things for you, but the way I can support you in meeting your goals is helping you with laundry, making sure you have healthy meals and so forth. But
Mhm.
at my house, Saturday morning, he cleans the downstairs for me, just automatically.
Mhm.
So, right, like these things I've been taught. It's unfortunate that Nate doesn't jump on the bandwagon because his brain just doesn't function like that. You need to give him exact, direct directions or he can't do it. And it's not even like now I can't even give him like multiple. So it has to be, Nate, you're going to need to do this. And then when he's done, then I have to give him another one because he forgets about the first one and does the second one. Um, so I'm trying to set him up with some life skills. Um, but I want to go back to, going into these homes and going into these situations. Um, we're not prepared properly through our education. Some of us have placements at a child protection agency, which is great because then you are in a way exposed. You're still limited to the exposure, but you are exposed. You do hear the conversations, you are involved in some of the debriefing and etc. And you do go to some of these places and you are involved, but not to the extent that an actual child protection worker is. So, one, our education doesn't set us up for great success to begin with when it comes to setting some boundaries around self preservation, around ensuring that compassion fatigue doesn't happen and then burnout doesn't happen. So
Mhm.
here we are thrust into these wonderful situations that like smack you in the face because many times it is not the same socioeconomic class that you grew up with. So it's not a situation that you're like, oh yeah, like this was my norm. No, my norm and 90% of my clients' norms were on a completely different spectrum.
Mhm.
They were almost opposites. So you're not prepared. You're walking in thinking that, ooh, I'm in social work. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to make such a big difference. Have these beautiful rose colored glasses on that get shattered in like the first 5 minutes. I think it's like, oh, off now. Um, and so I'm glad that I didn't because I had already worked in some, social agencies with children who were removed from their parents' care. So I had already had some exposure. So I wasn't walking in with these rose colored glasses, but I also wasn't prepared when I walked in that it was going to be as challenging as it was. So
Mhm.
the maintaining of the ministry standards and et cetera, and all the paperwork, carrying a caseload of 25 to 30, the court involved files, like you get like a snippet, but they make it out to be like a nice snippet. It's not a nice snippet. The reality of it is that if you want to do this job and you want to do it well, you have to be prepared to have little work-life balance at some points, and then at other points having more. You have to be able to manage your time. And the thing that I would tell a lot of these new people going in is take your lunch. Take your lunch. um,
Yes.
because no one tells you how important. Yes, the union will tell you, but your boss won't. Some will support it and say, you know what, make sure you take your breaks. Hey, it's lunchtime, make sure you're eating. But there's a difference of I'm driving to a client's home and I'm eating lunch to I'm sitting down, no computer, no phone, and just breathing and eating, but like mindfully, consciously eating my lunch or sitting with coworkers and eating and talking. Um, that needs to be something that needs to be really driven home. And like, yep, you can work late, but you need to make sure you have a boundary. Like all of these things come with boundaries. If you're not safe, you have to say you're not safe. You have to fight back so that you can maintain your sanity.
Mhm.
Once you hit that level of burnout, which is, I wanted to bring this up. Facebook gave me a memory. 14 years ago, I had made a comment that I'm absolutely exhausted and overworked and that I should be doing more self-care. And you nicely, or that I'm an idiot for not doing more self-care or something like that. And you had commented that, yes, you are, that you're not doing more self-care. So my burnout at least is 14 years old, if not longer.
Mhm.
So, right, the decade and a half already that I've been sitting on burnout. And it was all because not being, and you know, you can do those little half day modules on self-care and self-compassion and those mandatory trainings that you have to go to. But as soon as you walk out the door, so do the concepts. The concepts stay in the room and you walk out and you aren't encouraged to put those concepts into play. Like it's not encouraged. It's
Yeah, because as you're talking, I'm actually thinking of the training that I attended that they gave us for on self-care. I don't even remember what the training was called. Um, I believe it was a 2-day training away from the agency, and there were quite a bit of us sitting around in like a classroom style. We might have gone to Niagara, or we went somewhere, another CAS somewhere where they had space, and we were taught about self-care and this whole work-life balance. And I would be lying if I told you I remember a single thing that they talked to us about, because it was just theoretical stuff that they talked about. I don't think that there was any real life situations, as in how this is what this can potentially look like. This is how self-care can look like, or this is what boundaries can look like within the context of the job you're doing. When you have two, three, four families that are really, really needing your attention today, as well as court asking for you, and then documentation and paperwork and stuff, and then meetings, and then the unexpected. Where and how do you include the boundary or the self-care piece in there? When you talk about even taking lunch, I remember one day pretty much deciding, I don't remember who it was who said within our space or area who smoked. Was it Ellen? Someone smoked. And I remember saying to them, the next time you go for your smoke break, take me along. Just bring me along. Because I had observed that the individuals that smoked took more breaks than the non-smokers, because they would be on a call, very difficult call. They finish that call and they'll be like, I'm going for a smoke. And that's their way of dealing and coping with this, stepping away from it all. Whereby I would be challenging call, finish, then I'm doing the paperwork, and then but meanwhile, maybe I feel like crying, and I feel like screaming, or I feel like, but I'm not giving into any of that. I'm just gonna sit and push through it all. So
or you or you were crying and documenting at the same.
I was crying and documenting, yes.
Yes, stains on your paper because we were still paper at that point, right? Paper and pen. Yes, and I remember bringing that up, and then I thought to myself, hold on a second. I'm the idiot that's not taking the breaks. They're the smart ones that are going out for the smoke breaks or walking over to Tim's for a coffee or whatever. I don't drink coffee. I don't smoke. So guess what? I'm not going to go get coffee and I'm not going to go for a cigarette. So then in the end, I'm like, hold on a second. They're the smart ones that are taking the breaks. That's my issue. That was my perfectionism coming out. That was my overachieving personality. That was mine. So like I did own it that, well, yeah, it's me that I'm not going outside for a cigarette. Like that's me. or I'm not stopping for a break. And I can remember putting like doing documentation and like putting a big sign on my chair, like do not disturb, having like big headphones on and
Mhm.
not even taking a moment to breathe. And sometimes that's all you needed is like a moment to breathe. When I left the CAS, I left with 100 hours of overtime.
Oh my God, Kristina.
The last, well, because I'm so anal, when it came to making sure that my files were ready for transfer, there wasn't anything that was missed. On my last day, I worked late to make sure I could get those files to like the most pristine condition to be transferred on to the next worker. There wasn't anything that was missed.
See, I was able to do that with CAS. And then as you're talking, I am thinking of how terrible I felt in in Alberta Health Services, where I had to transfer my files out when I was I leaving or was what was going on, but I had to either offload some of the files. That was probably towards the time that I was saying I'm moving from Fort McMurray to Edmonton, and I don't even know, right up, seriously, I say it's divine intervention because I don't even know how I was standing at that time because of all the stuff that was going on in my life. There was just so much. And if I were to create a timeline, I was looking at it the other day and thinking, okay, so 2016, although stuff started happening before. So 2015, my then ex-father-in-law died, but 2014 we're navigating his sickness, and then 2015 he died. 2016 my nieces came, and a week after they were here, then we had the first, the Fort McMurray fires, where again you go through that whole process and you're in it, but you're not in it.
Yes. You're
You dissociate. Like I was in it, but I wasn't in it because I remember sitting in the car the moment we had everybody with us, which was good because we went and picked the kids from school. My sister was visiting at that time from England, and she had literally gone home and just picked a passport and said, I want my passport because I'm going back. I don't care about my clothes. Like, I was looking at my stuff the other day and I still have a suitcase with her clothes in it that she brought 2016 and did not take with her.
by one.
Just, just like, I'm done. I'm out of here. But I remember sitting, and I don't know, it felt like it felt surreal to be sitting in a car waiting for other cars and knowing that there is no way to fly over these vehicles and seeing fire growing and just coming and coming and coming and like literally, and knowing you have nowhere to go because everybody is trying to get out. Everybody is in their vehicles, and it was an interesting experience. It really was. And even by the time we ended up driving out of town, and you could feel the heat where literally it was like the fire is burning here and the road is here, and you're just praying. And then we get into Edmonton, and because I was working as an employee assistance counselor at that time, no, 26, yeah, I was then expected to provide
Right.
counseling support and therapeutic support to everybody else. So there was no escape because the home that we went and landed into, they had multiple television sets, and all they did was just play the
Yes.
news and the news, the news. So we're seeing this thing in real time. And then when I would go to talk and speak to clients, the majority of the people that I was talking to were people that had evacuated from Fort McMurray. So they're still talking about their own experiences and their own trauma. And meanwhile, I haven't even processed what's going on. I mean, like I walked out of that house with just the clothes on my back. I did not even think to take anything with me. I was just in a daze, and then there's a part of me that was like, oh, we're all making this into a big thing, and it's not a big thing, and we're coming back tomorrow, and months later, we're still not there. So there was the forest fires and everything that happened during that time, going back to Fort McMurray probably in August, because that was when the smoke had sort of settled. I couldn't go back before that. And then going through the whole process of having the house cleaned out, the furnace and everything, and then literally laundering, is that what the word is? Washing every soft item in the house
Yeah.
because everything smelled of smoke. So like it was work, but round about that same time, that's when my dad died. So end of August is when dad died. And I'm trying to call home because I got a message that he was in hospital. So I'm trying to call home. And then I called the hospital. But as I'm trying to call the hospital, at the same time, I have the girls and my son, and I'm trying to get them sorted for school because it was literally, we're now jumping into, school. So I remember we were standing in line outside because we had to go to some school to register, but then there were also some resources that they were giving to students based on just what had happened and what had been destroyed. And it was early, early morning, must have been like 4, 5 a.m. I'm standing there, I'm trying to call the hospital and I can't get a hold of anybody. And then my sister, the one who's back home, changed her WhatsApp status or whatever to say, oh, my dad just died. So that's how I even found out that dad. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then once we were in school, my one of my nieces decided she wanted to run long distance, to run track or whatever the long distance running is called. Um, and she's texting me one day that she saw a bear and she's in a forest and she's running away from the bear. And I'm wondering, like, where's the rest of
Everybody.
with everybody else? So now I'm like, okay, is this child dying?
It's funny, but not funny because metaphorically, that would be like you running from a bear, but the bear is your life, right? Like, no matter what, it's going to get you, right? Like, unless you do what you need to do to get to safety or to get to that self-preservation, you can't outrun everything else, the trauma, the fires, the deaths, the trauma, not just from childhood but from relations, from a professional. I mean, how ironic that she's running from a bear, but like if you really think about it, that's literally what we do every day, is we're bear, right? And I always say, oh, I'm going to run the rat race, but I'm just running from this overbearing, overwhelming sense every day.
And then running and continuing to run. It's almost like that hamster wheel thing where you're just and you're not getting anywhere. It's I
Your
think
niece
when
the niece is okay. She got away from the bear.
oh yeah, she got away. She saw a mommy. I think she saw the cub first and did not see mommy and thought it was cute. And then as she's about to approach, then she sees mommy. And then she was like, yeah, nah, I'm out of here. I have to go. And she ran. I think she did not stop running. Like, but it was such a terrifying thing for me because I was still in that element of grieving, and you know how it is with grief that then you start having like anticipatory, you know,
Yeah.
like with anything and everything, you're also almost expecting it to end in death, and it's just like an overwhelming feeling. And then all of this stuff is happening, but you're also still holding space for others, and you're still showing up the way you're supposed to be showing up. And meanwhile, you're not necessarily doing the work you need to do to take care of yourself. So when it comes to files, um, fast forward a few years later, I remember transferring a file to a colleague. And by then I wasn't like, I don't think I was even functioning at all. I was, there was the shell of me was there, and it was just doing, the auto mode, doing what needed to be done. But the me person was not there. I was also grieving a colleague who had, died. And this is what I talk about when we talk about burnout, when we talk about this thing that drives us to work, Chris. It's this person was in her 70s and she was at work. She had returned to work
Oh,
in her 70s. And I recall her talking about her life and talking about how she was working so hard because she had to take care of her adult children that were not necessarily taking care of themselves. And she had a home where the person she had divorced multiple years ago, was still in that home, but she was the one who's still, responsible of whatever for like it was she just took care of everybody else. And I think she was on the list, but she was really down there. And I recall her crying a few times because her and we connected on buying all these therapeutic tools for kids because we worked with kids. So we'd buy musical instruments and I would play these instruments together in our office sometimes before, we started work. And she was talking about how she felt depleted, but was asking for permission to not be at work, was waiting to be given permission to not show up. But then there was also the part of her, that carer part of her, that would say, but I do have these kids in my schedule. And if I don't see them, if I cancel on them, then I'm doing them a disservice because they really need somebody to talk to. They really need, so that our element that we have sometimes where we think that, I'm gonna say it's this way, where we think that with the beat and end all of everybody or everything or therapy or whatever it is. I think it's almost like I don't know. I don't know what that is. But she went to work. I remember we did like a breakout room one time when we were all online and we're supposed to be talking about something and case management. And I remember trying to advocate and say to the supervisor, this person needs this and this person, but there was just this, the agency, this is what is expected, this is the standards, this is what is expected, this is, everybody needs to come together and we need to, and it didn't take much a time before she had to call an ambulance for herself at work because she went to work sick and told herself, no, I just need to see this kiddo. When I seen this kiddo or this couple of kiddos, then I'll go to the hospital afterwards. But no, they had to call an ambulance for her. And do you know what? That was the last day she stepped foot in that space because she went to the hospital. They found out that her cancer had returned, and she ended up applying for MAID, and that's how she left this world. So it was just, when I look at that and then I look at how the agency notified us of her death, I was aware because she was telling me what was going on every single day, right up to the celebration of her life, the day before she was to pass. And but we did not hold space to grieve. There wasn't that piece of, oh, our colleague and friend has passed. We need to do, spend time. Let's sit, let's debrief, let's figure out, let's get somebody to come in and speak to us about it. Or, no, that caseload that she was so worried about literally got transferred to other people. Those
yeah.
kids got somebody, there was no flags, flown at half mast for her. There was no, hey, let's, even
No.
though when she left, literally she just gave instructions that all her therapeutic tools, everything that was in her office, she donated it to everybody. She was just like, take it and use it because she didn't need it anymore.
Well, it's true, right? They're going to fill your spot even before your obituary is written. Like that's literally what happens. You are just a number. Um, and so something I've been like, so I still work with a child protection agency, and I have had the pleasure of working with many new workers. And so new workers, I'm an older worker. They know that I worked child protection because they're like, why do you speak my language? So I have to explain that I've done your job for a very long time. Um, and the one thing I tell all of them is that those files do not belong to you. Those files belong to the agency. You are the case manager. You work with the families, but they are not your files. You are responsible for some of the work on it, but in the end, the agency owns the file. It's the agency that needs to follow up.
Mhm.
If you are sick, someone else will do it.
Exactly.
It's fine because they can give direction. So take your vacation, take your lunches, take your sick time if you're sick. You have to take care of you because they won't.
Mhm.
They will push until they can and they will break you. And they did. I would still be there if I didn't get pushed to the point of being broken.
And then when they break you, they blame you for being broken.
Yes, 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 yes. Then it's my fault that I'm broken. Um, and yeah, and I mean, there were a few times that I was on a sick leave and I was taken off. And I remember one time I was off. I had just found out I was pregnant with Nathan. Um, and at the beginning of that pregnancy did not go well. They were thinking that I was going to lose him at around 12 weeks. And so I was off, and the HR manager was calling me and like harassing me to come back. Well, everyone gets pregnant. Um, I had been off previously for other reasons, but found out while I was off that I was pregnant. And I remember saying to her, well, you might want to know a little bit about the situation because it will affect long term. At that point, I didn't know that Nathan's pregnancy was going to fall out, and I was going to have him because they were saying that I was going to lose him. All my hormones weren't good, and nothing was going well at the time. And it was like it was awful. It was
Mhm.
I was like bullied back to work, and so I went back. Um, and it was awful. Like I can't say it any other. I didn't feel like I could take care of myself and my baby. I had to go back to work. And so of course I went back, and I had a supportive supervisor. I had to have blood tests on every other day. Um, so I had a supportive supervisor and I had a flexible schedule. So I was happy in that point. But that shouldn't happen
No.
with an agency that works with families to keep them together. If someone needs some time, like why wouldn't you give that time to that person so a more productive worker is going to come back? Like it just I
They
understand.
don't, I don't think in the grand scheme of things that they look at it as that. Because if they did, I remember when I actually started working there, I don't remember which team was off, like where they had the whole team off on mental health leave, like everybody from the supervisor to everybody on that team were off for a very long time. And I remember looking and kind of going, what is that about? And a few months in, I recognized what it was about because it was just it's the system. It goes back to that comment that you made where I was saying are we actually able to heal in the environment that injures us? And the system is designed in this way. So how do we, how do we disrupt? How do we shift things? How do we create space for ourselves in that system without losing our livelihood, without losing our ability to, keep food on the table, to, the reasons why most of us are working is literally for the money. Yes, there are a few of us who are like, if I won $1 billion, I would still be doing this work because it's a calling.
I'm
Maybe
like,
but it's it's about navigation. And I think if the more of us that come together and say, hey, this needs to happen, the easier it becomes for us then within those systems to start saying, okay, break time is break time, lunch time is lunch time. Like I will always be grateful to Veronica as a supervisor because she taught me the value of putting aside and protecting her lunch, because her lunch hour was her lunch hour. I don't know if she's changed now, but I remember that 12, she would be out of that building. She never stayed in her office. She was not accessible to anybody. And I remember talking to her, and she would say when it was summer, she would go drive by the lake or sit by the lake and just read the Bible. And winter, she would find, some places to go, but away from the agency, where some people like us who work through our lunch would not go and knock on the door and say, hey, by the way, I have this question for you. But she steps away from it all and then returns. So I want to be that person that actually recognizes the value of walking away and protecting at least my break and then coming back when I need to come back. I recognize the time. Any lasting words as we're figuring this thing out? We might have to like start looking at maybe reducing the amount of time we talk, but or maybe keeping it as is. Who knows? It is our organic talk. We'll just do what feels natural.
but you are correct. You cannot heal in the environment that broke you. So it's very difficult to return to a place when your burnout isn't even addressed. So I hope that you did take that time to take those little rest periods that I had suggested. Uh, I
And I try what I tried. I don't like using the word tried. I did get sick, so I sort of was forced
perfect. You're
into kind of rest.
not good that you got sick, but that you were rested. But you got because your body's not able to fight. So I guess that's our homework for the next. Let's see if we can do it again. I did it a few times. Uh,
Okay,
good.
good.
So I think that's something that we should continue.
Okay, we'll continue with our homework from 2 weeks ago. We'll take breaks. I will shut my eyes for about 15 minutes and then I'll just document what shows up.
Perfect.
All right, my love. It
All
was lovely as usual. And we'll talk again in a couple of weeks.
right. Okay. Take
Uh,
care of
you too.